Welcome to the first episode of Unschooling the Mind, hosted by me, Tasha Fishman. I just got out of the shower. I've got wet hair. I've got the kids in alignment. They are playing their games and making their breakfast, and we have made a family commitment that they will give me time in the morning to do some of the work that I want to do, to be able to create this community, to be able to talk on this platform in order to expose the evils that are going on in this world, of which I feel called to do so, and make the world a better place for my kids and my kids' kids and your kids and your kids' kids. So welcome and thank you for joining. So I wanted to start with Unschooling the Mind and the birth of this podcast. This is a direct response to the Canadian Bill C-11, which has been passed. Now, this is the censorship law that's come in place that is now coming after podcasters. I never thought that I would start a podcast, nor did I think I was ever going to be involved in social media talking about controversial things in my life. I did some marketing for our family business back in the day, and I literally used to have the rules that you speak only about family, business, and community endeavors. Never, ever was anyone allowed to speak about anything controversial, anybody who was working on our team. So that changed very quickly, 2020. Some of you may know me and you may know my story, and some of you are just tuning in for the first time. So I had a very abrupt awakening back in 2020 with the whole COVID nonsense and narrative. And it was really because in my previous life, I used to be an outreach worker, and I worked for 10 years with families who had children with disabilities. So that was all through my 20s. And unbeknownst to me, I was being educated around families who felt they were medically injured and their child were medically injured by vaccines, and they were gaslit by the systems, on and on and on. So I had this in the back of my mind. So when I hit 30, got married, got pregnant, I started to do a lot of research on vaccines. Now, I was very low key and very quiet about this. I made a decision that it wasn't the direction I was going to go for me or my family. We and myself educated myself with homeopathic nosodes and other ways to protect the kids from childhood diseases in a more subtle way. So of course, that's not accepted in mainstream. And I knew that very clearly when I would have to go to a hospital, let's say for a broken arm or some kind of checkup, or have to sign something for a school, and there would be some harassment. And it was really hard. You know, sometimes I went to parties and they would be talking about those parents that don't vaccinate. Like if there was, let's say, a measles outbreak, and I would just quietly stick to myself. I never expected that I'd be speaking about this publicly. But I realize now, looking back, that my life was setting me up to be on this stage in this way and show up in this way in these times, all of the things that I've been through. So 2020 for me, something switched on, a light inside of me. I knew not right away. I bought the narrative, hook, line, and sinker the first 2 weeks, 3 weeks. We had to lay off 65 people from our family business. And of course, we just wanted everybody to go back to work. And so I became part of Mask Makers YYC and started making masks for the lack of PPE that they said they had for surgeons and people. And, you know, it's funny because it just kind of shows you how unconspiratorial I was by nature. At the beginning of all of this, I was really just a team player. I have a great love for humanity. Nobody goes into social work if they don't. Well, maybe some of them do, actually. There's a lot of fucked up social workers. I should actually retract that entirely. But I would say that I'm a caregiver and I love humanity. So that's my story. But anyway, was on mainstream media. This is before I stopped trusting mainstream media. You know, getting these masks and getting them delivered and using our vans and our resources to get the job done. And my sister-in-law came by and she showed me some things, so a documentary and a video from David Nino Rodriguez, which is a former boxing champion in the States. And he started talking about pedo wood, and he started talking about that this isn't what it seems, and there's lots of things going on in the background. And something in my soul ignited in that moment. I remember calling her crying. He also talked about children. He talked about an industry that's bigger than arms and bigger than guns, arms, and drugs combined, called adrenochrome. And something in me ignited and clicked. And I called my sister-in-law crying, and I said, I don't know what this is, but I know I want to be part of the solution. That's all I knew. Shortly thereafter, I quickly realized that the intention behind COVID was to vaccinate the planet. And I remember listening to the CEO of the Calgary Flames shut down the Stampede grounds for the NHL hockey. And he said, when we get a vaccine, we'll all be able to be together again. And I just knew it. I just absolutely knew that that was it. And because for years and years previous to that, I had been, under the radar, avoiding these toxic vaccines, which I now can confidently say that's what they are. I just knew what the intention was, and I knew that we couldn't be a part of it. So from that landscape, I started to really witness the entire mainstream narrative from a different vantage point. And that is literally around May 2020 when I just started doing research, more and more research. There was a couple people online that were posting contra-narrative things. I started to follow it. I started to research things, and it was just like peeling back an onion, rabbit hole after rabbit hole, extremely painful. The first thing that I posted in May of 2020 was a video that was put out in the Italian parliament. And if you all remember back then, they were saying Italy was hit the hardest and all these people were dying. And there was an MP in the parliament of Italy speaking about the corruption around this narrative, and that Bill Gates and Monsanto and the politicians were to blame, and the media. And so I reposted that on Facebook, and it got taken down within hours. And that was my first experience of censorship. And I was outraged, and I thought everybody would care. And I posted, I can't believe Facebook just took off my post, and I got met with such ridicule. I got met with such hate and vitriol from neighbors, strangers, my kids' coaches, people just, coming out of the woodwork so angry. And I literally was so naive to think that, people were really going to care about this, because this was a big deal. Why would they censor this? Why are all these 5G towers going up as well while we're all on lockdown? That was another thing that I was trying to explore at the time, and it was met with a lot of ridicule. So I was definitely not expecting that. That was my first experience of censorship. And here we are today, 3.5 years later, under full censorship laws, which they are now also trying to go after podcasters. So the first protest I ever went to was June of 2020. And that was for Bill C-11, this bill that we're talking about. Even when I was at the trucker convoy, and I was there for 5 weeks working behind the scenes with the most amazing international giants in their field, doctors, lawyers, truckers, mothers, fathers, politicians, undercover cops, thesis workers that weren't vaccinated, that were there helping us. Maybe some of them were now looking back, undercover plants by the government, but that's another story. And I remember even then, some of the political analysts and strategists saying, oh, don't worry, Bill C-11 will never go through. Will never go through. And later on, I was doing a show with Taking Back Our Freedoms with Dr. Laura Braden. On weekly, we did a live show, and her and I behind the scenes would say, like, we need to talk about this bill. We need to talk about this bill. The slow creep to communism. And the producers didn't want us talking about it. Just said, it's not going to happen. Don't worry about it. So here we are. So this is the birthing of the Unschooling the Mind podcast, because I feel that in response to the slow creep of totalitarianism that's happening, or maybe it is already completely here and we're just waking up to it, that we need to get louder, we need to take up more space, and we need to stand our ground. And we need to do the opposite of what they're telling us to do. Because what they're trying to do right now is scare us into free speech, scare us into speaking, They want to regulate everything. And here's how bad the cognitive dissonance is with people, okay? So they'll say to me, even my own husband, well, it's only for podcasts making, 10 million plus. Well, that's cognitive dissonance right there. That is when you don't understand something fully or something scares you or you can't wrap your mind around it, that you will latch on, your mind will latch on to something to justify what is happening. We've seen this in the last 3.5 years with absolutely everything. There are still blinded morons today who actually believe that this COVID thing was a thing and it still is a thing. And you see them out wearing their masks. And maybe I shouldn't be so mean to say that, but they are mindless. They are mindless. They are not online. They are not in their bodies. They are not using their critical thinking, their discernment. They are disconnected from source if they are still in that fear-based, trauma-based, destruction of the nervous system-based rhetoric. So this podcast is in response to this outrageous attack against Canadian freedoms and sovereignty. And most Canadians are still asleep at the wheel. I thought this thing was going to be wrapped up in 6 months. That's how naive I was. I thought by the end of 2020, people were going to get it. They were going to understand. They were going to put it together. We would have people in jail. And this would be the biggest global psyop ever to be witnessed by humanity, and things were going to change. I had no idea the depths of the conditioning, the programming that we've all been subjected to, myself included. I am not a holier than thou person saying that I have it all figured out, that I know all the answers. I don't always get it right. That's for sure. But I feel called to share my journey and live my life out loud, to be a lighthouse for other people who are on the path of awakening, especially those who are doing it abruptly, because that's what happened to me. So basically, backtrack, I posted that May of 2020, immediately recognized that there was a problem, that I could no longer live in the life that I had been living. We had spent years building the home to raise our children in that we were living in at that time. I knew I needed to move out of that home, out of that neighborhood. I needed to take the kids with me. I knew I could not take them back to school. Everybody couldn't wait to push them back on the bus September 2020. And I get it, because let me say this again for the people in the back. What people experienced in 2020 is not homeschooling. All their kids sitting on laptops trying to finish out a half curriculum with a bunch of other kids online and a teacher, that is not homeschooling. That was hell. That was hell on earth. I experienced it, so I totally get why people were like, let's get them back on the bus. But for me, because I had this spiritual awakening, I knew that I could not go back. I knew that there was going to be hysteria. I knew there would be some good teachers, but I knew there was a whole lot of shit bad ones that were stuck in that fear-based mentality. And they would be screaming at our kids to socially distance, and they would be perpetuating the government narrative, just like the little drones that they are. I mean, think about it. So many teachers, and it's not a slag on teachers, but just think about it. Some of these teachers, even today, they have no idea what's going on, because when you try to talk to them, it's like talking to a fish and asking them to describe water. They went through the system like we all did. They stayed in the system. They went to university to work within the system. And then they're out there working in the system. They haven't done anything. They haven't done anything else. They don't know anything else. They have been taught to blindly accept authority without question. And those are the people that are teaching our children. So I just knew, there's no way. But I had no idea what to do. But I had taken Tony Robbins' business mastery course a couple years prior. And I remember he always said, you need to burn the boats in order to get to the island. So I convinced my husband to let me homeschool for a year. He thought I was absolutely nuts. He was already concerned with the path that I was taking and the rabbit holes. I mean, this stuff kept me up at night, you guys. And if any of you are going through this right now, trust me, I have so much compassion in my heart for you, because I understand. And I think it's more difficult as you wake up to all of this at the 11th hour or whatever hour it is. But to me, it's a little late in the game. But there's been some people that have been awake to all this stuff since 9/11. And imagine living out the last 20 years with all of us sleepers. So I have a lot of compassion in my heart, and I understand, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. Sometimes I would hold my kids so tight. All of the systems which had raised me, which I trusted in blindly, yes, because I didn't know anything else. I thought they had my best interest. I thought they had my children's best interest. All of a sudden to find no, that's not the case. Not only do they not have my best interest, they're actually designed to harm me, to poison me and my children, to kill me. And there's a culling going on right now. And most everyone doesn't see it. And the media is complicit, and big tech and corporate technocracies are complicit. The globalists and all the alphabet, agencies are complicit. It's like waking up in a video game. It's like literally waking up in the Truman Show. So if you're at that place right now, I understand you. This is why I've created this podcast. Unschooling the Mind is about taking responsibility. It's in an awakened state. We are taking our kids back home because we understand that there's a war being waged against them on so many fronts, which we will get into down the road. But it's also about us unschooling our own mind to be able to have the capacity and the agency to be able to have our kids home with us. I can't tell you how many people, and I was one of them, that think that they are not qualified or capable of having their kids home with them. They are terrified to do so. They know there's something wrong at the schools, but they're not going to do anything about it. And that is because of the conditioning and the programming that we all have inside of us, that we have been told that we're not qualified. We have been told that we aren't capable. We have been told how hard it is. But let's get this straight. Government schools are a 200-year-old experiment that has failed miserably. It is actually doing exactly what it was always intended to do. And if you go back historically and understand the foundations of compulsory schooling, you will understand that it was created by the same people who are running this COVID scam. It was created by business and industry and governments in order to create reflexive, obedient order takers, followers, dumb down the masses. Literally, I have quotes from, Mencken and JP Morgan and the Rothschilds saying they don't want too many chiefs. They want more Indians than chiefs. That's from their wording. You can go look at their manifestos. Then you start to put it together. You look historically, all of these stories have been hidden from us, how there were actually gun shootouts on the farmland with the authorities because people did not want to give their kids to the government. They knew. And I mean, what were we told when we were going to school? Oh, thank goodness our benevolent government came together and gave us education to enlighten all of us because we live in a free democratic society, a country. We are so lucky compared to those third world countries, aren't we? Are we? Or has this been a great setup? In my opinion, it's a great setup. And Canada is definitely on the target map. All of the Western countries are. So unschooling the mind is a process. It's difficult. It can be painful. But on the other side of all of that is freedom. There are so many things. So what happened for me, just back to the story, September 2020, everybody puts their kids back into school, and I'm on my own, completely on my own. Husband thinks I'm crazy. I moved out to the woods with the kids. This is going to be amazing. I bought all the school supplies that one does at a teacher, store. My kitchen looked like a classroom, and we were going to get into it 3 hours a day, and then we're going to have the best time ever. And it was an epic fail on the third day. And I couldn't understand why. How could they do these things for somebody else and not me, their mom, who they love? What have I done? What have I done is what I thought. Luckily, through divine timing and intervention, I ended up meeting and finding Dana Martin, who is the founder of Radical Unschooling. Unbeknownst to me, I didn't even know if it was 2 words. I didn't know if it was legal. All I know is I watched her on an interview and I was like, bingo, that's what I want. She emulated and she exuded a freedom and a respect for her children that I didn't have, that I knew I didn't have. I knew I had it in me, but I didn't know if I was allowed to have it. Like, that's how conditioned my mind was. Just like so many of you who are even listening to this right now. I literally was like, do I have permission to unschool my kids? Do I have permission to do this? Can I do this? So fast forward, bought all the programs, went into her apprenticeship program. She's coached me for years. We've become friends. I still consider her my coach. Life-changing work. Life-changing work. Having to question all of my beliefs on how I think kids ought to learn, my role as a parent, all of the myths. I had to take them each one individually, look at them, see if they served me anymore, see if they served our family anymore, and either let them go or keep them. And most of them I let go. I didn't realize that I was a control type freak parent who schlepped her kids to and from every activity, had them in schools. We did private schools, we did public school, we did whatever. And I controlled their tech, to control them. And I used it as a means to control it. I controlled their food and what they ate. And I controlled every aspect of their lives because I was trained that was what it was to be a good parent. Like, this is why I created Unschooling the Mind too, because God, I pray my kids don't ever want to go to university. I think they'll all be burnt down by the time they're ready. But literally, I want all my money back from university because if you can imagine this, after university, 22 years old, was going into people's homes. I was trained to use cognitive behavioral therapies. I was in psychology. That was my background. Cognitive behavioral therapies to make children with disabilities more compliant for their parents. Now, it wasn't all bad. I mean, I did good stuff. I mean, we did routine charts and we did the gold stars and we did this and that. And we did the timeouts. I mean, it is absolute opposite of what I'm doing today. But I understand now that I was submersed and being raised in the authoritative model. And that is what they taught me and trained me to go out into the world and do and be with other people. Once you wake up to the government, that you're in an abusive relationship with your government and you're waking up to the authoritative model in every aspect of your life on a macro level, you bring it home to a micro level and go, oh my gosh, where am I like that? Where am I a tyrant to my children? Where do I push my agendas onto them? That is the type of work that I had to do. And that's the only way anything changes, is when we take what we don't like that's going on the outside of us and we move it into the inside of what's going on us and we do something about it. That was the work. And it's still going on. I'm still doing it. So I started unschooling my kids. I start doing the deep, hard work. And I literally become a different human, a different parent. I have a different relationship with my children. I'm so grateful for COVID and this pandemic because of it. There's so many blessings. I can't imagine it any other way. It's still painful time to time, relationships lost, family relationships lost, lots of things. But the incredible path that I've forged by having and meeting other lighthouses who've paved the way, which I'm so grateful for all of the people and parents who took the time to do blogs and write books and speak out just like I'm doing. I'm so appreciative to all of them that I found them and that they were able to show me a different way. So here I am, unschooling my kids, allowing them to have unrestricted freedom and time to grow and be who they are and be loved, where connection is the most important thing over correction, where I continually challenge my own beliefs about what I think they ought to be doing, being, seeing, thinking, where I give them freedom of choice, freedom of mind, freedom to know what they know. And I come from it and I ask them from a place of curiosity rather than repetition, needing them to memorize things to make me feel comfortable because they need to know certain things in order to, not be behind. All of these things are myths and conditions and beliefs that have been bestowed upon us that keep us from having a real, authentic relationship with our kids, a real connection. But we don't question it ever. Why would we? We are in a control matrix, the school matrix, the system. So simultaneously while this is going on, I end up meeting Jason Christoff. Now, some of you may know him, some of you may not, but for you, those of you who do not, I suggest that you follow his work. And from there, it was just mind-blowing. So then it was understanding psychological operations, the essence of mind control, how it operates, who these people are, ancient ruling families from the past, that this has been going on for a millennia, forever, really. How the TVs are used as bioweapons, going down and researching all of the things from Project Paperclip to MK Ultra mind control, and really solidifying what I was experiencing on the outside. The awakening of realizing, thinking all these people around me are zombies. Can't they see what I see? What's going on? For some reason, I was immune to it. Now, when I was a child, I was an empath, and I struggled with what I saw, especially when it came to animals, movies, things like that. The paper. I remember my dad saying to me once when I was 15, because I was upset with something on the news he was watching, and he said, well, if you don't like it, don't watch it. And I was like, yeah, all right, I won't. And then I remember when I was 18, my aunt said, well, how are you going to have a credible conversation with anyone intelligently if you don't read the paper? And I was like, well, I don't know, but I do. I seem to get along okay. But I really was an avoider of news. When I went to university, I did a political science class and I loved it. I thought it was so interesting. But I had to read the paper to do some things, but I really avoided news. I really avoided papers. I avoided magazines. I avoided even malls would drain my energy. And I didn't understand it until I met Jason Christoff and him explaining to me the mind control around it. Because I used to say to my friends, I always worked as a waitress and a lot of them worked in retail when we were young. And I would say, I hate going to the mall. Like some of them worked at Holt Renfrew and it would just irk me. I said, I always feel like I need more. I'm not good enough. I need this. I need that. I was just always acutely aware of the feelings, because I'm an empath, of how I felt when I was with someone or somewhere. I became a fundraiser for nonprofits after I did my tenure as a outreach worker. And I always worked for the underdog. I always worked for the small organizations. I was offered to work at the Children's Hospital and the Cancer for Kids. And I didn't want to work at those big organizations because I thought, you know what, they have tons of money. They have lots of support. Let me work for the underdog. But what it was the feeling behind it. These huge organizations, I mean, you want to go down some rabbit holes? They have the cure for cancer. There's 6,000 patents that are on hold for the cure for cancer, that are on hold and have been for years and years and years. Okay. They have it all. And these organizations keep draining the public and throw out a check once in a while with a couple kids in wheelchairs and make it look on TV like they're doing a great job. It's all bullshit. So I can see looking back that I was being prepared for this. There's so many things that happened to me in my life. So many times I was kicked out of this, or I moved here, or I was the outsider, that prepared me to be able to stand in this time. But nonetheless, it's still been a struggle. Relationship issues. My husband and I are solid now, but boy, we sure weren't the first couple of years of COVID. He thought I was absolutely nuts. But, after enough time, you start seeing it. But even the way we are today, he is still having to really be in the matrix. We still have to live our lives. And I am with the kids, but I'm also in this world, this alternative world of other hundreds of thousands of people who are awake and trying to create businesses and do things together and create a new kind of parallel society. So it's not easy, but here we are. And so I created Unschooling the Mind, this community, which will be launched very shortly, to be the one-stop shop, the thing that I wish I had had when I felt so alone when I first came out of the matrix and I was there with my kids and my beliefs and my need to control and my overwhelm and my anxiety and my worries about the future. I had to go find all the coaches. I had to go find all the people. I had to go find all the understandings and go down the rabbit holes. And so I created a community that will be a soft landing, because I predict that 2024 is going to be a massive, massive exodus out of the school system. And this is a soft landing for people. It will be a soft landing where they can be nurtured. They can feel heard. They can feel understood. They can do their own research. It's going to be like a buffet of resources. We've got group coaching. I have expert coaches and speakers that will come in regularly. We'll have resources for your kids, because here's what I have found in the last 4 years, even with my homeschool gathering in-person group, local group, is that everybody's on a different time continuum. And everybody has different interests, and the new earth isn't built yet. So what works for some doesn't work for others. And so we really need to have options. And there are amazing people in the industry, the education industry, who have left the system, who have created offerings and programs and cool stuff and forest schools and all these things and learning centers and online courses for kids to do. So I guess what I want to say from that is I want to reassure you, if you are just showing up, if you haven't pulled them and you're thinking about it, is that you are not alone and there are options for you. But here's the disclaimer. You are going to have to change your life 360. I have so many people that come to me and say, okay, well, just tell me what to do, Tasha. Just tell me what I need to do, but don't tell me I have to change anything. Or they give me excuses like, we have to work. We both have to work. Well, is that true? Is that really true? Do you both have to work? No, you both don't maybe have to work. You might have to downsize your house. You might have to sell your home. You might have to move in with the grandparents. You might have to go down to one income. You might have to this, you might have to that. But this is a war going on right now. And if you understand the magnitude of what's happening and what's at stake, it's an easy decision. People come onto my page and they try to make it sound like, oh, I'm privileged and you're so lucky and we have to do this. Excuses, victim mentality. Don't want to hear it. Been listening to that bullshit for years, and I'm not doing that anymore with anybody. If you understand what's going on and you are ready to pull your kids and you are ready to make those hard decisions, we have a place for you. We have a place for you to get the support, the resources that you need, and to get you on your way. All the rest of it is excuses, or it's a lack of understanding of the magnitude of what is happening with our children. Between the SOGI curriculum, the sexualization of our kids younger and younger, the trans agenda, the no gender agenda, all of these things coming down from these globalist organizations who have captured our governments, between critical race theory, making white kids feel guilty for nothing they are responsible for, and all other ethnicities feel that they have less agency. This victim mentality that they're oozing every day through the school system. The bullshit, climate hysteria. There is no climate change other than geoengineering. Let's get that straight right now. The digitization of children, online citizenry, the social credit score that's coming down the pike. We got to be really clear here. The government and these evildoers at the top, they don't care about us. We are the last standing force between our children and this evil. That's it. They don't care about us. They hope that we die off, that we take the vaccines, that we go and do whatever, that, eventually the fluoride in the water gives us Alzheimer's. They are after the kids. There's a quote that says, he who owns the youth gains the future. And that was a quote by Hitler. Just think about that for a second. So, unschooling the mind. Because of my work with Jason Christoff, I got to really get familiar and understand the subconscious brain. The subconscious brain, the part of our brain that loves us so much, but it is designed to seek out repetitive content and to find safety in the herd, regardless of if that choice is actually beneficial for us or not. It could be detrimental to our health, but if the herd is doing it, if the perceived majority is doing it, our subconscious mind will gravitate towards that. And it'll gravitate towards the things that we saw mostly in our childhood. Those things are usually set by the age of 12 in our subconscious mind, the patterns. If you go and watch and listen to Bruce Lipton, who I've studied for a very long time, he will tell you that from 0 to 7, children are recorders. They're just picking up everything. They're just picking up all the data. And about age 12 is when these hidden beliefs kind of secure themselves, develop into who we are. We think we're a certain personality, we're a certain way, and our entire reality is based on these subconscious patterns. And the people who rule us know very well about this, and they use it against us. They use it against us in marketing, in movies, and they use it to socially engineer the herd in ways that will benefit them and not us or our children. So that's what Unschooling the Mind is about. It's about all of it. It's about recognizing our own mind, our own patterns with our children, with ourselves, how we view the world, questioning them, observing them from a place of outside of the program so we can actually determine whether we need them or not, whether they're hurting us or not. And then living a free lifestyle, one that encompasses family, faith, and freedom. Unschooling is the antidote to global governance and tyranny because it's a reclamation of us taking our children back. We are the providers. We are the leaders, the nurturers, the decision makers. We gave these people life. Yes, they're their own person and their own soul, but we are the guardians of these precious souls, not the government, not a global, centralized, powered government that doesn't have our best interests, that is brainwashing our youth to think only of diversity, inclusivity, and equity, these buzzwords on repeat to get them conditioned to accept things like climate lockdowns and more pandemics. They just signed a pandemic treaty. What do you think that means? A pandemic treaty with the WHO, one of the other evil entities. I was just in Geneva and saw it. Do you know that these organizations are all within 5 blocks of each other? The United Nations, the WHO, the AI technology, the institution that has all the patents in the world, they are all within a 3K radius of each other. I don't care if they had good intentions at the start. These institutions have been captured and they have a big plan and a big agenda for us, our children, and our children's children that does not benefit humanity. So what do? Well, we can't control everything outside of ourselves. That's one huge thing that I've come to recognize over the years. You know, I did a lot of protesting. Like I said, I went to the truckers convoy. I've been on shows. I've done stuff. I've rallied. The most recent was the Million March in September for children. I was away during the one in October. And of course, with what's going on in the Middle East, it's been squashed a bit. But what I realized is that we can only control what's going on with our own state, our own mental, physical, and spiritual state. And from there, it goes out to the home, right? It exudes to the home. And then from there, our community. So what I was doing before was going outward, 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 inward, 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 simultaneous. And I've come back to realizing that everything starts with this. If I'm not good, no one else is going to be good. It's like I was on all these airplanes recently and they talk about putting your mask on first. And I know that's very difficult as a parent, but it's necessary. It's necessary that we put our mask on first, take care of ourselves, ask ourselves, what can we control? That doesn't mean spiritually bypass. That doesn't mean stick your head in the sand. That doesn't mean don't get involved in things, but it means be well boundaried. Brene Brown says the most compassionate people in the world that she ever met in all of her research are the most well-boundaried people. Think about that. For those of you who are empaths, for those of you who are caregivers, think about that. That was a big one for me to try to understand and start to encompass in my life, is being well-boundaried with what I take in. I just had a huge 4-week break from AI, tech, social media. It was amazing. It was amazing. And I suggest for any of you who are struggling right now that you do the same. It'll always be there when you come back until they unplug the machine, or until we unplug the machine. It's necessary. We need to be a lighthouse. We need to be a beacon. We need to be out there. We need to stand our ground, but it's just as necessary to take breaks from that and say no and be in seasons of no, which my coach has really instructed me to do in the last 3 months so that I can build this platform and so that I can have the energy for my family at the same time. Because it's so easy to get lost. So easy to get lost and lose focus and sit in fear. And I really believe that the powers that be, because I do believe this is a spiritual war, so whatever dark consciousness it is that we are battling feeds off our fear and our negative energy in whatever form that comes. Whether it's that you're scared of the, financial collapse that might be coming, or you're scared of COVID. It doesn't matter to them. They just want us in a perpetual state of fear because we are more easily able to be controlled when we are in a state of fear. So to me, I just want to take my mess and make it into a message, because the message of hope in all of the craziness that I've been through in the last 4 years, 3.5, 4 years, is that on the other side of being in the unknown, taking the risk, going rogue, pulling your kids out, not knowing what you're doing, being terrified and doing it anyway, questioning yourself, looking at your hidden beliefs, collaborating and immersing yourself in new information with new people that you wouldn't have known otherwise. All of this, on the other side of this initiation, is freedom. True freedom. When I look back at who I was before 2020, a closeted people pleaser with anxiety, seemingly had it all together, running around doing everything for everyone else, taking on and put helium hand and saying yes to everybody because I cared what they thought. I cared what they thought of me. Nothing like a spiritual awakening and a fake pandemic to really burn yourself down, the old version of yourself. But, we rise again if we choose to, out of the ashes, and we can reinvent ourselves to the more authentic version of ourselves. And that's what I feel that I've done. I don't give a shit what anybody thinks. I've been called so many things that are so untrue that it's laughable, that it doesn't matter anymore. I have no fear. I don't claim to know it all. We're just all walking each other home. But I can tell you what, I will not be censored. I will not be quieted. I will not be silenced. And I will just get louder and take up more space as they continue to try to clamp down on all of us. And I will do that until the next person wakes up and does it. And the next person. We are light frequency. When our little light bulb goes off, doesn't matter if nobody's ready over here, or this people think you're crazy, or that's that, or but whatever. Other people feel your frequency and they start to align. It's like the 100 monkey syndrome. If you don't know about that one, it's a good one. It's like there was a certain amount of monkeys, and the monkeys started washing the potatoes in the water before they ate them. And all of a sudden, out of the 100th monkey started doing it. And there was monkeys in other regions of the world that started washing their potatoes and eating them. Think about that. That's incredible. We are connected. We are all connected. So even just speaking your truth, because there is a consequence to not speaking your truth. People are sitting there, and maybe that's you right now, and no judgment. But I will tell you that there is more pain right now in being silent, in being a tire kicker, a fence sitter, just sitting around kind of watching what I do and what I say, what happens to her, what happens to him. There is a consequence to your silence, and I don't have to pay that consequence. You have to pay that consequence. There is liberation in speaking your truth and coming from a place of curiosity. And speaking your truth can mean just questioning, just asking the questions. That's what I was getting in trouble for, just asking questions. Not even allowed to do that. That's why unschooling our kids is so important. Unlearning everything that we've been taught and starting from baseline again. Going back to our roots. God, community, homeschooling. Family, faith, and freedom. Doing what people did for millions of years before 200 years ago. Before every industry has been captured by pharmaceuticals and these old ancient ruling families, the governments, the schools, the institutions. We were living in community. We were living in family clans. We were surviving and thriving together. That's what we have to go back to. But we're doing it in a time where we have technology. We still have to live in the world. We still have to talk with the zombies. We still have to get our groceries. I mean, my life has fundamentally changed in how I shop and what I do and where I go. And a lot of it's with farmers. But we still have to be in this world in this time. So luckily, because we are frequencies, we find each other and we are creating a parallel society. So that's a little background I just wanted to give you about Unschooling the Mind, the reason I started this podcast. And mostly it's going to be, 20, 30-minute riffs on what's happening. But more importantly, the things that I've learned on my journey in the past years, the hacks that I can give you, getting into just the most important things that people ask me, which is, oh my gosh, my kid is going to be on tech. Like how to use technology as a tool for connection rather than control. There's a big one right there. So, when things go on in my life, I'll take 20, 30 minutes here and there to kind of rant or give a riff about it. And hopefully that will help you. And if you are interested in being surrounded and immersed in a community of like-minded mamas and papas who are doing the work and supporting one another, go to my website, tashafishman.com, and you can get more information about that and sign up for our community and our group coaching and see what it's about. So until next time, friends, have a wonderful day and keep your mind open. Clear eyes, open heart, can't lose. Bye for now.